You're lying in bed. It's 3 a.m., and sleep just won't come. Out of boredom, you open the AliExpress, Amazon, or any other marketplace app. Your eyes catch a funny silicone phone case shaped like a corgi, or maybe a cheap garlic press that costs just a couple of dollars. You press the buy button. Shipping is free, or it costs mere pennies that you don't even think about. You put your phone away, close your eyes, and fall asleep. But at that very moment, your simple tap on the screen triggers one of the most complex, expensive, and paradoxical chains of events in human history. Think about the absurdity of this from the perspective of pure physics and economics. A piece of plastic, molded in a factory somewhere in Shenzhen, has to make a journey that 100 years ago would have been considered a voyage around the world. It must be packaged, loaded into a truck, driven to a Chinese port, and cleared through customs. Then a massive crane has to place the container holding this phone case onto the deck of a ship the size of the Empire State Building. This ship will cross the Pacific Ocean, battling storms, burning thousands of tons of fuel, and docking in Los Angeles or Rotterdam. Next comes unloading. A train crossing the continent, and a giant sorting center where lasers and scanners read barcodes on the fly. And finally, a tired courier in a van has to drive through your city, find the right building, take the elevator, and drop this $2 case right at your door. And for all of this, you paid $2, and sometimes absolutely nothing. But here lies the greatest mystery of our time. If you try to send this exact same case to a friend who lives in a neighboring district of your own city, the local postal service will charge you more money than the shipping from China cost. Delivering an object 5 kilometers within a metropolis turns out to be harder and more expensive than transporting it 10,000 kilometers across the ocean. How did we get here? The answer lies in the very heart of the global logistics system, which is woven from brilliant engineering insights, deeply flawed international laws, and the ruthless psychology of consumption. Today, we will dive into the mechanics of global trade and unravel the greatest paradoxes of infrastructure. We will learn why global postal services subsidize the Chinese economy for decades, why the last few kilometers to your door are a literal black hole swallowing trillions of dollars, and why free shipping doesn't actually exist. To understand why the system breaks down at your door, you first need to realize how brilliantly it works in the initial stages. Until the mid-20th century, global trade was unbearably slow, dangerous, and expensive. Imagine a port in the 1940s. It was a chaos of barrels, crates, and sacks of various sizes. Stevedores carried everything on their backs. Loading a single ship could take weeks. Goods were lost, broken, or stolen right on the docks. Bringing goods from across the ocean was a privilege, not a routine. Everything changed in 1956 when a truck driver named Malcolm McLean asked himself a simple question. Why transfer sacks from a truck to a ship when you can just load the truck's entire cargo box onto the ship? And so the standardized shipping container was born. This invention changed the face of the planet more than the internet. A container represents absolute uniformity. It's like a Lego brick. It stacks perfectly on a ship's deck, is lifted by a crane onto a rail car, and from there onto a semi-truck trailer. All the while, no one touches the cargo inside. The goods are sealed at a factory in Asia and only opened at a warehouse in Europe or America. But the main thing the container provided was the effect of an unbelievable scale. Modern Megamax-class container ships are the leviathans of the seas. They hold up to 24,000 standard containers. Just one of those containers can hold tens of thousands of pairs of socks or phone cases. When you take the cost of chartering the ship, the salary of a small 20-person crew, port fees, and even the astronomical fuel bills, and divide those expenses by the millions of goods on board, the math works miracles. The cost of transporting one t-shirt or one smartphone from Shanghai to Europe drops to fractions of a cent. The ocean ceased to be an obstacle requiring massive investments. For logistics, the ocean is a smooth, flat, practically free high-speed highway. You load the ship, and it sails monotonously toward its destination without traffic jams or stoplights. The paradox is that globalization has made macro logistics obscenely cheap. But this perfect system breaks down as soon as the container exits the global highway and enters the narrow streets of your city. In logistics, there is a term that makes the CEOs of major companies twitch: the last mile delivery. This is the final stage of delivery, the journey of a package from the local city warehouse directly into your hands. And here is the shocking fact. This tiny final stretch, making up less than 1% of the total distance, eats up to 53% of the total cost of the entire delivery. More than half of all the money humanity spends on logistics burns up right here. The last mile is a financial black hole. Why? First, harsh mathematics comes into play. A ship or a train travels from point A to point B. That is one simple, predictable route. But when goods arrive in a city, they scatter into hundreds of thousands of tiny shipments. A courier in a van must hit 150 different addresses in a single shift. This is the classic traveling salesman problem, a mathematical puzzle where you have to find the shortest possible route through a given set of points. There are billions of combinations for how to route just one neighborhood. Now add the chaos of the real world. One-way streets, sudden pipe repairs, rush hour traffic jams, accidents, and a lack of parking spaces. Parking is a separate kind of pain. In the centers of major metropolises, logistics giants like UPS or FedEx pay tens of millions of dollars annually in parking fines. This isn't a driver error. It's built into the business model. It's cheaper for a courier to abandon the van, double parked with its hazards on, and take the ticket than to spend 20 minutes circling the block looking for a legal spot, ruining the delivery schedule for all the other packages. Second, on the last mile, logistics collides with the most unpredictable factor: humans. A ship doesn't have to ring the ocean's intercom, but a courier spends precious time on every single one of us. The customer ran to the store and isn't answering their phone? Angry dog in the yard? Broken elevator to the 15th floor? Typo in the apartment number? Every failed delivery attempt is a disaster for a logistician. The item has to be taken back to the warehouse, processed, stored, and then delivery must be attempted again the next day, doubling the cost of the service. In the US and the UK, attempting to solve this problem led to couriers simply being allowed to leave packages at the door. And this spawned a new epidemic: porch pirates. Millions of packages are stolen from doorsteps every year, resulting in insurance payouts, angry customers, and the seller having to reship the goods at their own expense. The last mile is a chaos that cannot be standardized as easily as a steel container. If the last mile is so expensive and inefficient, how do marketplaces manage to offer us free shipping? The answer lies in human psychology and marketing manipulations that forever changed our consumer behavior. The illusion of free shipping was created by Amazon when it launched its Prime program in 2005. They conditioned us to believe that if you buy a product, you shouldn't have to pay to transport it. Today, this is the norm for us, but for the industry, it has become a curse. Research in behavioral economics reveals a striking fact. A buyer would rather buy a $20 item with free shipping than the exact same item for $15 with a $5 shipping fee. The total amount is absolutely identical, but the brain perceives a separate shipping charge as an unfair penalty, as money thrown to the wind. Over 60% of abandoned shopping carts online are the result of a customer suddenly seeing a shipping cost at checkout. Therefore, retailers resorted to a trick. Free logistics does not exist in nature. Trucks don't run on Holy Spirit, and couriers don't work for thank yous. Sellers simply bake the cost of this insanely expensive last mile right into the price of the product itself. If you buy shampoo on a marketplace, you aren't just paying for the shampoo. You're paying for the gas, the sorting center's operations, and the courier's salary. Large corporate giants can afford to even take a loss on delivering some items, offsetting it with profits from other high-margin products or paid subscriptions. Smaller sellers, however, are forced to suffer. giving the lion's share of their profits to logistics companies just to stay competitive and avoid scaring off customers with a shipping $10 label. We have become hostages to our own comfort, forcing the entire logistics chain to operate at the very edge of profitability just for the psychological satisfaction of the word free. Psychology explains how domestic delivery works, but what about those dirt-cheap parcels from China? After all, the product doesn't just travel the last mile, it crosses international borders. To unravel this historical anomaly, we need to rewind time back to 1874. It was then, in the Swiss city of Bern, that representatives of 22 countries gathered to sign a treaty creating the Universal Postal Union, or UPU for short. Before this, sending a letter to another country was an absolute nightmare. You had to stick on stamps from every transit country and calculate complex tariffs at borders. The UPU created a single global postal space. Now, a stamp from your country guaranteed that a letter would reach its recipient on the other side of the world. But an imbalance problem arose. What if country A sends 1,000,000 letters to country B, but country B sends back only 1,000? It turns out that country B's postal workers are doing a massive amount of work, that exact expensive last mile, delivering someone else's mail absolutely for free. To fix this, in 1969, the UPU introduced a system of terminal dues. The sending country had to pay the receiving country compensation for processing and delivering mail on its territory. And right here lies the main mistake that spawned the AliExpress paradox. The UPU is a UN organization, and it was guided by good intentions. They divided countries into different tiers of development. To support the poor, developing economies of Africa, Asia, and South America, they set preferential, artificially low rates for these terminal dues. Wealthy Western countries agreed to deliver their mail almost for free in order to stimulate global trade. Guess which country received developing status in a postal sense and retained it for decades to come? China. By the early 2010s, China had become the main factory of the planet, an economic monster shipping billions of parcels. But under the rules of the Universal Postal Union, it was still paying third-world rates. When a Chinese seller shipped a small packet weighing up to 2 kilograms, which covers 90% of electronics, phone cases, and clothing, to New York or Berlin, China Post paid the US Postal Service or Deutsche Post mere pennies. These terminal dues didn't even come close to covering the real costs of processing, logistics, and the mail carrier's labor inside America or Europe. It resulted in an absolutely absurd, upside-down economy. The national postal services of developed nations subsidized Chinese manufacturers for years. It was more profitable for the US Postal Service to deliver packages within a single state. Yet by international treaty, it was obligated to carry the weight of Chinese exports, losing hundreds of millions of dollars annually. American entrepreneurs howled with rage. They were paying 5 times more to send a product within their own country than a Chinese seller paid to deliver the exact same product across an ocean. Only in 2019, after a massive scandal and threats from the US to completely withdraw from the Universal Postal Union, were the rules revised. Countries were allowed to set their own rates for incoming parcels. Shipping from China got slightly more expensive, but it still remained cheap because new logistics schemes entered the stage. Private postal consolidation programs, massive cargo charters, and customs agreements that allow Chinese marketplaces to process such volumes of goods that the economy of scale begins to work again, even in the air. We now understand how goods get into our hands. But what happens if you don't like the package? You open the box, try on the t-shirt, and it doesn't fit. You hit the return button, a courier comes to pick up the item, and you get your money back. It seems like it's just delivery in reverse. But for logistics, this is an absolute catastrophe, known as reverse logistics. If the last mile is a black hole, reverse logistics is a supernova explosion. When a product travels to you, it exists in a perfect, optimized system. It sits on a pallet, in the right packaging, with a barcode that scanners read in milliseconds. But when a product returns from you, it becomes entirely unpredictable. The box is dented, the factory seal is broken, the sweater might have a stain or smell like perfume. This item can no longer just be tossed back onto a warehouse shelf. It must be manually inspected by a human being. They have to assess its condition, check that all parts are there, steam it, repackage it, print a new barcode, and enter it back into the system. The process of handling a return costs twice, and sometimes 3 times as much as assembling the initial order. And here lies the darkest secret of modern online retail. For a massive amount of cheap goods, like those $10 t-shirts or plastic toys, the cost of reverse logistics exceeds the value of the product itself. It is physically unprofitable for companies to try to sell them again. As a result, millions of tons of absolutely brand new, perfectly functional goods are sent to incinerators or giant landfills every year. Companies destroy electronics, clothes, and shoes simply because sorting and repackaging them costs more than manufacturing new ones in a factory in Asia. In some cases, the smart algorithms of marketplaces calculate this instantly. You process a return for a cheap item, the system refunds your money and tells you keep the item. This isn't generosity. It's cold mathematical calculation. It's cheaper for them to gift the item to you than to pay for the courier and the warehouse sorter. The fashion industry suffers from this the most due to the phenomenon of wardrobing, when people buy several sizes of clothing to try on at home, or buy an expensive outfit for a single photo shoot and return it the next day. Online shopping has bred a generation of consumers who place no value on logistical labor, and the whole planet is paying the price.
Logistics is the circulatory system of our planet. Invisible, incredibly complex, full of contradictions and paradoxes. We started with the idea that delivering a $2 phone case from China seems impossible. But now we see the whole picture. We understand that the ocean, thanks to shipping containers, became a free highway. We learned how outdated rules of the Universal Postal Union forced the Western world to pay for Chinese expansion. We stared into the black hole of the last mile, where traffic jams, stairs, and closed doors burn through billions of dollars. And we realized that free shipping is merely a psychological trick, paid for with environmental damage, mountains of destroyed returns, and streets clogged with couriers. The next time you press the buy button and a courier rings your doorbell the next day, look at that cardboard box differently. Hidden inside it is a story of human genius, geopolitical maneuvering, and a mad consumer race. We live in an era of a true logistical miracle, one that we have grown far too accustomed to taking for granted. And this miracle continues to evolve right before our eyes.